The scale beneath Lucia Fernandez's feet showed exactly what the wealthy Beverly Hills businessman had paid for: 125 pounds of Peruvian nutritionist who was about to provide metabolic therapy that had nothing to do with losing weight. She stood naked in the upscale clinic's private treatment room, watching him undress while he explained how this was all part of an advanced European weight loss protocol. The diplomas on the wall were real. Her nutrition expertise was genuine, but the services she was expected to provide had been redefined in ways her university training had never covered. The journey to this moment had started with such hope just 6 months earlier. Lucia had been working as a clinical nutritionist in Lima, helping families develop healthy eating habits despite Peru's challenging economic conditions. She specialized in childhood obesity prevention, worked with mothers who wanted better futures for their children, built programs that made nutritious food accessible in low-income communities. It was meaningful work that barely paid enough for survival. When the economic crisis deepened and her clinic lost government funding, Lucia faced an impossible choice. Her mother needed surgery for a heart condition, her younger brother was starting university, and her own student loans demanded payments she couldn't make on unemployment benefits. The American opportunity that appeared through professional medical networks seemed like divine intervention. Dr. Rebecca Chen's wellness clinic in Beverly Hills was recruiting international nutritionists for an exclusive weight management program serving ultra-wealthy clients. The position offered a salary 10 times what Lucia earned in Peru, plus visa sponsorship and a chance to work with cutting-edge metabolism research. Dr. Chen's credentials were impeccable. Medical degree from Harvard, published research in prestigious journals, client testimonials from celebrities and business leaders. The application process was thorough but encouraging. Video interviews where Lucia demonstrated her expertise in nutrition science, psychological evaluations to ensure she could handle demanding clients, even language assessments to verify her English skills were adequate for professional communication. Everything suggested a legitimate medical opportunity that would advance her career while solving her family's financial crisis. The journey to Los Angeles was more complicated than initially described. First, Lucia flew to Mexico City, where Dr. Chen's assistants helped process her work visa through contacts who could expedite the normally lengthy approval process. The delay was frustrating, but explained as necessary for ensuring all documentation was perfect. Any mistakes could result in visa denial and deportation. During the 2-week wait in Mexico City, Lucia stayed in a modest hotel paid for by the clinic. She used the time to study American nutrition guidelines, familiarize herself with California health regulations, and prepare for what she assumed would be challenging but rewarding work. Other international medical professionals were also waiting for visa processing, creating a small community of hopeful immigrants pursuing American dreams. The border crossing was surprisingly smooth. Dr. Chen's legal team had prepared all documentation correctly, and immigration officials processed Lucia's work visa efficiently. No complications, no additional questions, just stamps and official approval to work as a nutritionist in California. The relief was overwhelming. She'd legally entered America with a professional visa for legitimate medical work. Beverly Hills exceeded every expectation. Dr. Chen's clinic occupied an entire building on Rodeo Drive, with state-of-the-art equipment, luxurious patient facilities, and staff that moved with the quiet efficiency of those serving ultra-wealthy clientele. The waiting room featured designer furniture, original artwork, and the kind of ambient luxury that suggested clients who could afford anything. But there were no other nutritionists. Dr. Chen explained that the clinic operated with small, specialized teams focused on individual client needs. Lucia will be working directly with a select group of high-net-worth individuals who required personalized attention that larger practices couldn't provide. Her nutrition expertise, combined with her youth and attractive appearance, made her perfect for clients who wanted both professional competence and aesthetic appeal in their healthcare providers. The first week was orientation and training. Lucia learned about the clinic's approach to weight management, which emphasized holistic wellness rather than simple calorie counting. Clients were business leaders, entertainment executives, tech entrepreneurs, people whose stressful lifestyles required innovative approaches to health and fitness. The protocols she studied seemed legitimate if unconventional, focusing on stress reduction and metabolic optimization. Her housing was a comfortable apartment in West Hollywood, shared with other international medical professionals who worked at various clinics throughout Los Angeles. The arrangement felt professional and safe, providing community support while she adjusted to American life. Her roommates were from different countries but shared similar stories of professional opportunities that had brought them to California. The first client meeting changed everything. Marcus Blackstone was a real estate mogul in his 60s who'd paid $20,000 for a month-long personalized nutrition program. The initial consultation took place in a private suite within the clinic, decorated more like a luxury hotel room than a medical facility. Marcus wasn't interested in discussing his dietary habits or metabolic health. He was interested in Lucia. Dr. Chen had briefed Lucia about Marcus's specific needs, which allegedly included stress reduction techniques that went beyond traditional nutrition counseling. Wealthy clients, she explained, often required services that address psychological as well as physical wellness. Marcus had been struggling with motivation and energy levels that affected both his health and his business performance. The metabolic therapy Marcus had purchased involved Lucia providing what Dr. Chen termed comprehensive wellness support, designed to boost his confidence and reduce stress-related eating behaviors. The session began with normal nutrition counseling, but quickly evolved into requests for physical contact that Marcus claimed was part of European wellness protocols he'd experienced at expensive spas. When Lucia tried to maintain professional boundaries, Dr. Chen intervened with explanations about American medical practices and client expectations. Wealthy patients were accustomed to concierge-level service that included whatever they needed for optimal wellness outcomes. Lucia's role was to provide holistic support that addressed all aspects of Marcus's health, including stress relief that might involve physical intimacy. The legal framework Dr. Chen described made Lucia's situation seem both professional and inescapable. Her work visa was tied to employment at the clinic. Her family in Peru was depending on the salary she'd promised to send, and the contract she'd signed included provisions for comprehensive patient care that apparently covered whatever services clients requested in the name of wellness. The clinic's other nutritionists were all young, attractive women from various countries who'd been recruited through similar false pretenses. There was Elena from Colombia, who'd been promised research opportunities in sports nutrition. Maria from Ecuador, who'd thought she was joining a pediatric obesity prevention program. Ana from Venezuela, who believed she was being hired for her expertise in diabetes management. All had discovered that their nutrition expertise was real, but secondary to their primary function as high-end escorts for wealthy men who enjoyed the fantasy of receiving medical services from qualified professionals. Their degrees were legitimate, their knowledge genuine, but their services had been redefined to include sexual healing that wealthy clients had justified as therapeutic rather than transactional. Dr. Chen's operation was sophisticated in its psychological manipulation. The women were provided with real medical training, given opportunities to use their expertise in consultations with clients, housed in comfortable conditions that felt professional rather than exploitative. But this investment was designed to create emotional attachment to their situation and make leaving feel like abandoning legitimate career opportunities. The clients who purchased nutrition therapy were paying for elaborate fantasies about receiving health care from beautiful, educated professionals who were financially dependent on their satisfaction. Sessions combined real nutritional advice with sexual services that clients had characterized as wellness treatments rather than prostitution. The medical setting made the transactions feel therapeutic rather than explicitly transactional. Lucia's second client was worse than Marcus. Thomas Chen, apparently no relation to Dr. Chen despite the shared surname, was a tech executive who developed what he claimed was a food addiction that required intensive intervention. His purchase treatment plan involved daily sessions where Lucia would monitor his eating habits, provide nutritional guidance, and offer stress relief that supposedly prevented him from overeating. The sessions took place in Thomas's Beverly Hills mansion, where he created a medical-style room, complete with examination tables, monitoring equipment, and nutrition charts. But the setup was designed for his sexual fantasies rather than legitimate medical care. Lucia was expected to wear revealing versions of medical scrubs while providing services that combined nutrition, counseling with sexual gratification. Thomas wasn't interested in actually changing his eating habits or losing weight. He wanted the experience of being treated by a qualified nutritionist who was young, attractive, and available for whatever therapy he deemed necessary. The nutrition expertise Lucia had worked years to develop was being used to make his sexual fantasies more convincing rather than to actually improve his health. The other clients followed similar patterns. Wealthy men who paid enormous sums for fantasy of receiving medical care from beautiful professionals who were obligated to provide whatever services they requested. Some claimed to have eating disorders. Others wanted metabolism optimization. All wanted sexual gratification disguised as therapeutic intervention. Dr. Chen's business model was brilliant in its exploitation of both client psychology and practitioner vulnerability. Wealthy men could pay for sexual services while maintaining the fiction that they were receiving legitimate medical care. Young women with medical expertise could be recruited through professional channels, then gradually coerced into providing services they'd never have accepted if described honestly. The clinic's location and presentation added legitimacy that made the operation almost impossible to recognize as trafficking. Everything looked professional. The Beverly Hills address, the medical equipment, the qualified staff, the legitimate business license. Even the women providing services were genuinely educated professionals who could discuss nutrition science competently while being sexually exploited. Lucia's attempt to refuse certain services were met with reminders about her visa status, her family's financial dependence on her salary, and the consequences of breaching her employment contract. Dr. Chen's lawyers had crafted agreements that made the women responsible for substantial financial penalties if they failed to provide complete client satisfaction. The psychological toll was severe. Lucia had entered medicine to help people improve their health, but her expertise was being used to justify her own exploitation. Clients paid for fantasy of receiving care from someone qualified provided, while she was reduced to a sexualized version of her professional identity. Some clients were almost kind, treating the sessions as expensive therapy that happened to include sexual components. Others were cruel, using their medical fantasies to justify behaviors they claimed were necessary for their psychological wellness. All understood exactly what kind of services they were purchasing, regardless of whatever health concerns they claimed to have. The breaking point came during her third month. A new client named Richard Stallworth had paid $50,000 for what Dr. Chen described as intensive metabolic rehabilitation. The treatment plan involved Lucia living in his mansion for a week, monitoring his nutrition around the clock, while providing whatever support was necessary for his health goals. Stallworth wasn't trying to lose weight or improve his health. He wanted the experience of having a live-in nutritionist who would cater to his every need while maintaining the fiction that their relationship was medical rather than sexual. The week became an elaborate role-playing scenario where Lucia was expected to provide services that had nothing to do with nutrition while discussing dietary science to make the fantasy convincing. The mansion was equipped with a fully functional medical suite where Stallworth acted out scenarios involving medical examinations, treatment procedures, and therapeutic interventions that were entirely sexual in nature. Lucia's nutrition expertise made the role play more authentic for a man who was paying enormous sums to live out fantasies about being treated by qualified medical professionals. During that week of captivity disguised as intensive medical care, Lucia understood that her situation would never improve through compliance. Dr. Chen's operation was designed for permanent exploitation of women whose medical expertise could be used to justify their sexual availability. The clients weren't seeking actual health care, but rather elaborate fantasy experiences that required qualified professionals to make them convincing. The escape opportunity came when Stallworth's housekeeper, an older woman from Guatemala, recognized signs of trafficking in Lucia's situation. The housekeeper had seen other young professionals brought to the mansion under similar circumstances, all claiming to provide medical services while clearly being exploited. She discreetly provided Lucia with contact information for a trafficking hotline. The call to the National Human Trafficking Hotline led to a careful investigation by federal agents who understood how medical professionals could be trafficked through legitimate-seeming healthcare opportunities. Lucia's detailed knowledge of nutrition science, combined with evidence of the sexual services she was forced to provide, convinced investigators that Dr. Chen's clinic was operating a sophisticated trafficking scheme. The raid on the Beverly Hills clinic was coordinated with arrests at client locations where nutrition therapy sessions were in progress. Federal agents found detailed records of the services provided, payment schedules that revealed the true nature of the business, and evidence that Dr. Chen had been operating similar clinics in other cities under different names. Lucia's rescue felt surreal. One moment she was preparing for another session with a client who claimed to need nutritional counseling for stress eating. The next, she was being interviewed by FBI agents who understood that her medical expertise had been used as cover for sexual exploitation. The transition from victim to witness happened quickly, but processing the trauma would take much longer. The legal proceedings revealed the scope of Dr. Chen's operation. Over 3 years, she'd trafficked dozens of women with medical backgrounds, all recruited through false promises of professional healthcare opportunities. The clients who'd paid for services included some of Beverly Hills' wealthiest residents, men whose wealth provided legal protection that kept their involvement largely secret. Most clients faced minimal consequences. Their attorneys argued they believed they were receiving legitimate medical services, despite evidence suggesting they'd understood the true nature of what they were purchasing. Some paid fines, made donations to anti-trafficking organizations, continued their lives with minimal disruption. The ultra-wealthy rarely faced meaningful punishment for exploiting the desperate. Dr. Chen received a 15-year sentence for trafficking and fraud, but her organization's financial networks proved too complex for complete prosecution. Money had been laundered through legitimate medical businesses, making it difficult to distinguish between legal income and profits from exploitation. The Beverly Hills clinic was closed, but similar operations likely continued elsewhere. Lucia's T visa eventually led to permanent residency, then citizenship. She found work with a legitimate community health organization, providing nutrition education to low-income families who genuinely needed her expertise. The career she dreamed of took a different form than expected, but involved actual health care rather than performing for wealthy predators. The other women faced varied outcomes. Elena returned to Colombia but found it difficult to practice nutrition counseling while carrying the trauma of trafficking. Maria remained in America but struggled with trust issues that made professional relationships challenging. Anna disappeared into witness protection after receiving threats from clients who feared exposure. Therapy helped Lucia understand that her medical expertise hadn't been destroyed, just temporarily corrupted by those who'd use it against her. She learned to separate her authentic desire to help people from the performances she'd been forced to give. Nutrition science could still be healing, even after being weaponized for exploitation. The medical community's response to the scandal was predictably inadequate. Some organizations implemented new protections for international medical professionals, but the fundamental vulnerability of immigrants seeking professional opportunities remained largely unchanged. Wealthy men still sought ways to access qualified healthcare providers for sexual gratification, and desperate professionals still needed opportunities that predators could manipulate. Lucia spoke at medical conferences about trafficking prevention, warning healthcare professionals about opportunities that seemed too good to be true. But she knew her audience included both genuine reformers and potential predators, studying her words for insight into how to avoid detection. The medical system that had enabled her exploitation remained fundamentally unchanged by her survival. 3 years after her rescue, Lucia worked with legitimate clients who actually wanted to improve their health rather than exploit hers. She helped families develop sustainable eating habits, educated communities about nutrition, built programs that made healthy food accessible to those who needed it most. The work was meaningful in ways that her forced performances for wealthy clients had never been. She kept her nutrition textbooks from Peru, the ones she'd studied, while dreaming of using her knowledge to help people. The science hadn't changed, but her understanding of how it could be corrupted had deepened. Medical expertise could be a tool for healing or a weapon for exploitation, depending on who controlled its application. The Beverly Hills Clinic building was sold to a legitimate medical practice that provided actual healthcare services. But Lucia knew the location was irrelevant. The exploitation would continue in other facilities, other cities, wherever wealthy men could buy the fantasy of receiving medical care from beautiful, qualified professionals they could sexually exploit. She'd come to America to help people lose weight, and discovered instead how her expertise could be used to strip away her own dignity. The medical system that had promised to amplify her healing abilities had instead used them to attract predators who paid premium prices for fantasy of receiving health care from someone they could sexually dominate. But her knowledge survived, even if the context changed. Lucia continued practicing nutrition science, just for different clients and different purposes. The degrees she'd earned couldn't be stripped away by those who'd exploited them, and her commitment to actual healing remained stronger than the trauma of forced performance. The wealthy men who'd paid to exploit her medical expertise continued seeking similar services from other traffic professionals. The system that had enabled their sexual exploitation of healthcare providers continued operating much as it always had, protected by legal structures and social reluctance to challenge those with enough money to buy whatever they wanted. Lucia knew that somewhere in America's vast healthcare landscape, other medical professionals were being recruited through false promises of professional opportunities, only to discover that their expertise would be used to justify their sexual exploitation. The healing arts continued to be corrupted by those who saw qualified practitioners as commodities rather than caregivers.